Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to Overwatch. So, please do bear with me. I think I've got a bit of a cold coming on, so my voice is not at its best, but we crack on nonetheless. So, Jeff made a post on the forums last night, and it's very, very interesting to see, actually. And it coincides with a video I actually wanted to create about where we are with 222 Roadlock. Now, let's start off with what I wanted to say about 222 Roadlock, because it will lead into what Jeff says. So, 222 Roadlock, in my opinion, has two distinct problems right now. And the fact is, DPS queues are very, very long. For me, it's about 15 minutes a time for DPS queues. I did have an instance one other night where I had a 15-minute DPS queue, the game got cancelled, I had another 15-minute DPS queue, and then I had a game which lasted 4.5 minutes because basically the team's through. So that was a thrilling experience of Overwatch. But that's besides the point. So, you've got long DPS queues, but something else I've been seeing a lot of, and I've heard other people saying this, and I'm going to quote Emong probably a few times during this video, because he said this as well, and he's kind of my example for high-level Overwatch right now, because I watch a lot of Emong. And, so if I go to my level of Overwatch, about around Plat, right, I am seeing a whack ton of Roadhog. And but a lot of the time, Roadhogs that are flanking. And the reason I think for this is because a lot of damage players are sick and tired of the damage queue. And so they're playing tank queue, because tank queue is the shortest queue, and they're locking off tank. Mainly, a lot of the time at the lower ranks, Roadhog. And then they're playing the off tank like a damage hero. And yeah, it's causing some issues. It is causing some issues. I have, quite a lot of the time, found myself screaming at my off-tank to say, playing, not through the voice comms, don't get me wrong, but I'm screaming in my head at the off-tank saying, please play with the team. I've seen it with Zarya as well. There's a Zarya flanking. My Zarya's flanking, I need you to bubble me so I can generate charge on my ult as Reinhardt. If you're off flanking and completely away from the team, there is nothing you can do to influence us. And the best place for Zarya is in the team fight so she can generate her energy. So, this playstyle of flanking off tanks, especially when you can get away with it with Roadhog sometimes, but with other tanks, it's really bad. And I actually saw Emong say this as well. He said the same thing, where he said at higher, where he plays at, which is basically GM, he's seeing a lot of Sigmas that are basically DPS players that have queued for tank. And they're playing Sigma as kind of like a DPS, because Sigma does a lot of damage. So, I think it's a problem at a lot of levels of the game. Now, at the very low levels of the game, sometimes you can get away with it. But when you start to hit, in my opinion, high plat upwards, if you've got a tank that is just not playing as a team player, you start to get very serious problems. So, that's my experience with it. And that's kind of the TLDR of it, for me. And that was going to be a whole video. But then Jeff Kaplan came out with this. So, basically, this was a discussion on the forum saying, Blizzard save your games. Go 132. Now, what this means is, someone said that why don't they change the 222 Roadlock to a 3-2-1 Roadlock? And go 3 damage, 2 support, and 1 tank. Now, it's kind of drastic, but it's also it kind of maybe could work, and there's ups and downs to it. And Jeff, this is an incredibly long post, but I'm not going to read it all out because it's just way too long. It's a video in itself just to read it out, but it's an incredibly good post. Now, he said, as a matter of fact, we've actually been testing this in the past couple of months. So what they've been doing, and I think people don't realise this, I've seen people, a certain high-level Overwatch player as well, come out on Twitter and say, oh, you're missing the point, you're not balancing heroes properly, blah, 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 and you're off testing this and testing that. I think you're missing the point here. They are testing this alongside doing other things, right? So, Jeff says, we've been testing 3-2-1. because when they were, you know, testing the role queue before it was implemented, they tested 1-1-4, which was 1 tank, 1 support, and 4 damage. And they realized that this couldn't work because 1 support was just not enough. It can't keep a team going. So they scrapped that idea and went with 2-2, which was very, you know, run-of-the-mill at the time. But 3-2-1 is an interesting one. And what Jeff says is really interesting. So they haven't just, like, changed the way the game matchmakes and it on their inside build, if you see what I mean, and changed it to 3-2-1 instead of 2-2-2. But what they did is during their playtests, so what they mean by this is they lived with this 3-2-1 comp while they did their playtests, I think, for the buffs and nerfs that we're seeing coming through on the PTR and such, so the previous ones and now these ones as well. It's not impacting on these nerfs and buffs, but while they were testing them, they were also doing this at the same time, which is actually, I think, really good. So they were testing this, but what they did is they significantly changed other heroes to try this. And he uses Roadhog as an example. So with Roadhog, obviously some tanks, and this is the problem we were talking about just now. Some tanks you have as off tanks, some tanks you have main tanks. So your main tanks are Reinhardt, Orisa, Winston. You can maybe put Sigma in that role depending on what you say, you know, and sometimes Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is kind of like the outlier in those, because you can kind of use them as an off tank as well. So, and the same for Sigma. But you've got 3 tanks that are a main problem, and this is what Jeff highlights here, and that's D.Va, Zarya, and Roadhog, because they fall into that off tank role. Like, they can't really do much else. They've got no barrier, then they can't sustain as a main tank. They just don't have that. So when he points out Roadhog, and they kind of internally have reworked him. They've moved him into the damage category, and he only has 400 health. He's Take a Breather, only heals and does not do damage reduction, and there was a bunch of DPS changes to his scrap gun. And I think this is very interesting. I don't think personally this would work, and simply because Roadhog is an ult battery, and that's mainly because of his size. And I don't think he would work in that damage category. I don't know. I don't know. But this is the problem. If you go with 1 tank, that 1 tank is going to be a main tank. So 3-2-1 would eliminate the off-tank role completely. It would basically no longer exist. So, yeah, that's kind of an issue in some respects, because I think it would be a struggle to keep your main tank alive. And he does go on to talk about the ups and downs for each category. So for the main tank, he said, well, it seems to put a lot of pressure on the main tank. And I would tend to agree. Because, honestly, if that tank dies, your team dies. There's no... You've lost all sustain. Whereas if you have 2 tanks, sometimes you can pull through with a bit of sustain that the off-tank will offer. So I can understand that point. And then he said from the support point of view, he said there is a massive guilt for the supports when the tank dies. Because when the tank dies, the team falls apart. So that's an issue. But what this does cure is the 2 problems I highlighted at the start of this video. DPS Q times and the problem of those DPS playing off-tank players. So you're kind of leeching Q time or Q quickness out of the tank category, and you're putting it into the DPS category, so the DPS category will have less Q time. And it's good in that respect, and I like that they're looking at that. I don't personally think this is the way to fix it, because I think it will introduce other problems. But I do like that Jeff is being completely open with this, and that, you know, they are testing stuff to try and make the game better and put it in a better place. So they go on to talk about team play, And they say it makes it more brawly, it makes it more FPS-y and less like a MOBA and things like that, which I think a lot of people are of the opinion that Overwatch has gone way too far down the route of being reliant on cooldowns and abilities rather than pure FPS and mechanical skill. Yeah, kind of. I kind of agree with that as well. It's difficult. But he says it's been a really interesting and fun experiment, but we're not really confident that it's the correct thing for the game. It solves a lot of problems, but it also introduces a lot of problems. I agree with him. I really do agree with him. It's nice to see that they are testing this sort of thing. This would be a radical change to the game, just like 222 Rollock was. I don't think this would work at the high levels of Overwatch. I don't think this would work at OWL, for example. I don't think it would be a good idea. I think 222 works well enough at OWL. So, would you have 222 at OWL and then 321 on ladder? You can't do that because that's disconnect. They will not do that. If 321 was to go to live game, they would go to OWL with it as well. And I don't think that would work. But they want feedback on this. They really want feedback on this. They even say that they've been brainstorming a possible way for people to test it, to bring the experiment to the community somehow, was Jeff Kaplan's words. Either through the PTR or on the live game somehow, perhaps another game mode or something. So, I think it's a good idea. And actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea in perhaps the arcade to just whack a 3-2-1 limited time mode or something and just say, hey, test this out for future of competitive or whatever. People would do it. I swear people would do it. I don't think 3-2-1 is the right thing for the game. I personally love playing off-tank, and the problem with that at the moment is that, as I highlighted at the start of this video, you get someone come in, they insta-lock off-tank, I'm forced onto the Orisa or the Reinhardt, and that's incredibly frustrating for me, because I look at my win rate is actually quite high on Sigma, it's actually quite high on Hog and Zarya, but it's not, you know, hovering around that 50% on Orisa and Reinhardt, if not below. So it's kind of frustrating for me when I see people insta-lock off-tank. And half the time, if I go and insta-lock Sigma, someone will go and insta-lock Zarya, or even worse, insta-lock Roadhog. And that's just frustrating. That there's a problem, you know, compositionally wise with the tank role right now. The support role is in a really good place with this 2-2-2 Rollock. The damage role, apart from the Q times, is actually in a really good place. I'm not talking about balance here. I'm not talking about, oh, Mei needs to be nerfed, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you know, compositional issues caused by team role. And I think a lot of the time, the compositional issues now come from the tank role. Because you've either got two off tanks, or you've got one of the tanks not knowing properly what they're doing. Which is bad in terms of team morale and team synergy and stuff like that, which is not good for competitive. But hey, there's a lot of things that can influence competitive, and last thing I want to round off on this one is going back to some of the posts I've seen where some people are having a go at Jeff Kaplan for saying this. He said it's not coming to the game, it's basically not coming to the game at the moment. They might try and put a test out somehow, and people are slating him for saying, well, they're testing this and they're not balancing heroes properly. There is a patch on the PTR right now. It's not been on there for very long. Go and test that. They need your feedback on that. Stop moaning about them testing something that could be radically different for the game and refresh the game. Stop moaning about that and go and test those balance changes out. Because the more information they have on those balance changes, the more they can balance. And the more they can try and alter the meta we're in. I am in the same boat as everyone else. I don't think the main nerfs were enough on the PTR. But the more it's tested, the more they'll change heroes to try and bring them in line. And as I said earlier on, this hasn't, from what I can read from Jeff Kaplan here, this hasn't detracted from busts and nerfs happening. This has just been something they've been testing alongside it, which I think is really, really good. And it's nice to see in-depth communication from the devs, because this is what people have been moaning about. And then this is the problem with the Overwatch community, and this might be another video entirely coming soon. They're never happy. You get communication from the devs, and then they're moaning at the devs for something else. You don't get communication from the devs, and they're moaning at the devs for no communication. We've got to make our minds up. If you don't want them to communicate, they won't communicate. If you want them to communicate, please don't just put them down when they do. Offer something constructive. Anyway, I am going to end it here because otherwise I'm not going to have a voice left and I just want to drink. That's what I'm going to do when I finish this video. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.